right, welcome back to Red Man Group episode number 35. We have a brand new panel and a new topic on this one. We're going to hop into red pill hacks, and we're not talking about hacking your way into the red pill. What we're talking about is hacks, people that don't know what they're talking about, that like to talk about stuff that we talk about. Let me introduce you to our current panel. To my left, I'll start with Alan Roger Curry of Mode 1, a alumni speaker of the 21 convention. Had a great talk at this event this past weekend. Beside him, we've got Ed Lattimore. Ed, what's your website, by the way?
EdLattimore.com.
EdLattimore.com. Former heavyweight boxer, physics graduate, just all-around dope guy. Like, he's just an awesome guy to hang around with this past weekend. Another amazing speaker. Right beside me, we've got Ivan Throne. He just put out a book called The 9 Laws. Best place to find you, Ivan, is on Twitter? Best place to find you is on Twitter?
Yes, best place to find me on Twitter would be at Ivan Throne.
At Ivan Throne, yeah. Mm-hmm. So Ivan's deaf, so we're gonna have Charlie in tech basically type him all the questions that need to come up that he needs to read. So you'll see him reading down. We're probably gonna have to tilt to talk to Ivan when we answer because he's got to read lips. Beside me to my right, I've got Rolla Tomasi of the Rational Mail, a regular panelist of the Red Man Group. Beside him, we've got Jack Donovan, a heathen, a man from Start the World. Follow him on Instagram. I think it's probably the coolest place to see what he's up to. He's a really cool guy, great author. If you haven't checked out The Way of Man or Becoming a Barbarian, what's your newest piece?
A More Complete Beast.
A More Complete Beast. I haven't read it yet, but I've got a copy of the book. Definitely going to check it out. And then beside Jack, we've got Tanner Guzzi, a style expert, masculine style. Is there a website you want to mention?
Yeah, masculine style or appearanceofpower.com. Let's check out the book.
Yeah, he's got a great book too, so I got a copy of that. I'm going to check that out as well. All right, gentlemen. We started the last broadcast asking the panelists what their experiences were like on the 21 convention. So let's start with Alan Roger Curry. What was your aha moment, big takeaway? What was your weekend like?
Oh, it's been great. It's been excellent. Got a chance to converse with a lot of guys from a lot of different places, not only here in the States, but a lot internationally. And they were asking me some great questions, and I think I gave them some great answers. But yeah, just listening to all the speakers, some I heard last year, I thought they were great, but they were even better this year. Then there were some new additional speakers that I thought delivered presentations that resonated with the audience in a great way. So it's just been fantastic. Anthony is just, I told George during my report interview, he raised the game this year. He keeps rising to another level. He's next level focused, and I've just enjoyed it. It's been a gratifying experience.
Cool. Ed Latimer?
Oh, man, so many takeaways from this weekend. The big one for me personally, before I get to everyone else, is that personally just seeing people who I've read their work and admired it from afar. The first thing I did, I ran up the island and I said, man, I read your book. Whoa. And I told him, and I downloaded it illegally when I read it like 10 years ago. So I had to buy a copy today to show my love, man. But his work, when I read that, I was going through a rough time in a transitional period in my relationships with women, and he helped me out. And getting to meet Rollo in person, for example, I read all his work. I'm a big fan of his books and his website. So to me, to be around these guys, to feel like, oh, okay, I really found some people who really think the way I think and are going after the world the way I go after the world. That's been the best part for me. The next great thing is seeing the response of all these people who read my work or read other people's work, and they've got so many questions, and just to see that I'm having an impact on the world.
I forgot to mention your book. It was
not caring what other people think is a superpower, and then insights from a heavyweight boxer.
Yeah, it's been a good seller.
But yeah, it has. Thank goodness. But that's been cool. And the most surprising aspect, because I think people have this idea, maybe we'll get into that today, is a bit of an auxiliary point. People have this idea what red pill is, and they think we're a bunch of angry guys or whatever. But speakers are here with their wives, guys are here with their sons. It really is a reclaiming of what is a masculine directive and where we want to go in the future, and not just be phased out, not be zeroed out, but have a voice for men in the future. So I've had a great experience to sum that up, and I'm really looking forward to being back here next year.
Cool. Did you get Charlie's?
Sure. The 21 convention has really been the 21 convention has really been a phenomenal experience. And what's so powerfully struck me is that each of the speakers are so unique. They're so distinct. There's not one cookie cutter caricature of masculinity. We're all different. All of the speakers have their own story, and they're all going all the way. They're not holding back. They're not trying to play it safe with their expression of who they are as a man, what they believe, what they stand for, what they teach, or what they do. And you can see the participants just soaking up all of these archetypes and options and choices. If you go all the way, you can take your individual sense of being a man, being a person, being an individual, and just expand that to the fullest extent that you can. And find your own path, and we're here to throw you ropes and show you how to get there.
Yeah, exactly. I've already commented in the first session, so has Rollo, so we'll pass it over to Jack Donovan. So what's your experience been like this past weekend?
Overall, I like the 21 convention just because it tends to be very positive. Like Ed said, it's instead of being an angry thing like a lot of people think it's going to be, it's really about changing men's lives for the better. And I think a lot of people here come here looking for something and looking for an answer, and I hope a lot of them found it. And as far as this year, I spoke last year, obviously, and as everyone has said, it's like last year only doubled. It's just more professional, it's better, and it's just been a really good experience.
Yeah, Tanner.
I think the biggest aha for me, and this is my third year coming out, so I've kind of seen it change quite a bit, is just how much the caliber of the attendees has improved. Guys are in better shape. They walk better. They're more confident. They're dressed better, which is awesome because a lot of times you go to conferences and it's just an exercise in futility because the guys get the dopamine drip. It's like, yeah, I came and I learned. And then they go back to their normal lives 2 weeks later. But to come back and see a lot of these guys who have come back, or a lot of new guys who are coming in, you can see that they're actually applying these principles. They're actually becoming better versions of themselves. And they're still hungry to come and do more. It's not just like, well, I'm in better shape and I'm better dressed and I'm more confident than everybody else around me, so I've arrived. But they still want to continue to do more. I love being around other men like that. I think it's so invigorating. Normally, we only get that kind of amongst us as speakers, but to feel like the attendees are so significantly stepping up their game. I mean, it's a peer group, and it's awesome. So it's been really fun to be around that this year.
Awesome. So today's topic in this broadcast is going to be on red pill hacks, guys that talk a talk but don't really walk the walk, or they don't really know what they're talking about. I want to pass it over to Rollo because he's kind of got a bit more of a insight on
I'm
it.
actually kind of glad I got the panel I did for this one now. It would be really easy for me to just sit here and just badmouth a bunch of different, alternative, sites or organizations, I should say, for masculinity. But I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to say that there are other organizations out there. Some of them are a little bit more focused on like this power positive thinking mantra that's going out, like more like a Tony Robbins kind of thing, where that is starting to appeal to, say, the Lost Boys generation. Like I gave him in my speech, I was talking about how there's a generation of men right now, young men, who are really hungry for this kind of stuff. They're looking to like someone like Jordan Peterson to say, oh, he's the father that I never had. And I look at what he's doing, and some of it's very positive, and then in other aspects of it, I'm kind of like, does he even really know what he's talking about? And then I see other organizations, such as like, I think it's called We Are Man Enough or something like that. And one of the reasons I want to talk about this is because when I see those guys and they're getting together, and really what they're doing is just sort of parroting back the same mantra about toxic masculinity and how can we be better men by being more appropriate or being more aligning with the feminine imperative. And it seems like they are.
Yeah, that's a weird dichotomy. Like, how do you become a better man by becoming more feminine, right?
Yes, exactly. And so it's this Lost Boys generation right now And we're seeing a lot of people kind of coming out of the woodwork to sort of exploit that as like this niche market right now. And I don't think that this organization, what we do here at the 21 convention, is anything remotely like that. I mean, I understand that we're talking to that segment of society, but it seems to me like we have a much broader, certainly a much broader, more diverse panel of guys here, and we're all on board with an idea about red pill from the perspective that we're going to embrace a conventional masculinity, which I got from this guy right here. And I kind of almost want to start with you because when I was reading Becoming a Barbarian, and in the very first part of that book, you were talking about how masculinity requires adversity, how it requires conflict, how it requires men sometimes competing and going head to head with each other and sometimes beating the shit out of each other. And how we grow right now and how we develop in a conventionally masculine sense. I think that a lot of people don't know what that is. And so maybe like the first thing to talk about here is what really defines conventional masculinity. What is it that we can offer here that nobody else offers? Because there's a lot of organizations that are doing it. There's a Good Man Project. There's Real Social Dynamics. They're trying to get into that power positive thinking thing. So they want to sort of build onto whatever it is that they had before and sort of go into these rah pep rally kind of scenes with their own following. But I don't see much in there. I see much more substance in this organization and in 21 convention than I do in anything else. But I just wanted to kind of get you guys' ideas as to what do you see as conventional masculinity? Because right now, so many of these guys are either they think that masculinity is ridiculous, or they think that it is confusing, or they think that it is something that is subjective that they can define for themselves. Which, of course, what happens is once they do that, they become subject to the outside influences of the feminine imperative that comes in and tells them, oh, well, here's what you should be. Here's how a man should be. So I kind of want to start off with just saying, what do you consider a conventionally masculine man? I just want to hit on the attributes of what we can universally call masculine, because right now, women will say, well, we want to masculinize women. So they will say that, well, I want to be more like a man. And we feminize boys and we masculinize girls right now. And part of that process is keeping men confused about what masculinity really is. And so I just want to see if we can maybe talk about just some aspects of what are universally masculine traits and characteristics.
Did you get that, Ivan? Yeah.
Well,
Why don't we start with you?
Listening while I had Dob, how do we define that? And we have things out there like the Good Men Project that you mentioned, and some of these other groups that are trying to push that purple pill mess. And, it really occurred to me what you define as masculine as a man. You hear a lot, he owns his shit. That's very true. But what occurred to me when I see these purple pill or halfway bodies of knowledge or groups or organizations doing, they're still trying to get mommy's approval. And then that being men.
Right.
A man does not, who is leading his family, who's leading his wife, who's leading his children, who's building a business, or maybe working for an employer, doing the best he can, is not doing it for mommy's approval.
No, that sounds like reclaiming authority. Like
it's not on his radar.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the giant pitfall of some of these purple pill, so to speak, groups. They don't want to go all the way. They will not take that final step of being a man. So to me, how do we define that? A man goes all the way. And he owns it.
Let's throw it over to Jack, because this is kind of your wheelhouse, brother.
This is definitely your wheelhouse.
Yeah. Thanks for the setup.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I think it's really important, as much as people talk about women in a conference like this. And I mentioned to someone, I mean, a lot of the talk actually is about women, and they're an important part of a man's life. But at the same time, a woman can't define masculinity for you, and that's really, really important. And whether it's groups of women like feminists or whatever, I think that men actually define masculinity. And obviously, my book, The Way of Men, was about trying to find that definition because, as you said, there are so many people trying to define it for men that if they don't have that basis to really this grounding in what they actually are sure that masculinity is, they can be easily like led astray or confused, whether it's by advertisers or feminists or what have you. So my thesis with The Way of Men was really that the way of men is the way of the gang, and that actually it's groups of men that select each other. And we're actually wired for group selection, and it's kind of like a sports team. Like other men approve of you. What are the qualities that they see in you that make you more masculine to other men? They also are the same qualities that obviously women see as masculine. But I think we define it first by what men see in each other. And with The Way of Men, I went through a lot of like evolutionary psychology, and then also looked at feminism and looked at cultures all around the world. And a point that I made in that book was that there's a difference between being good at being a man and being a good man. And a lot of these like the Good Man Project obviously is about being a good man, which sometimes is like being a good boy, like being a good slave, being a good boy, doing what you're told. And that's all cultural. And I wanted to get away from something cultural. And I think that being good at being a man, you don't have to be a good man to be good at being a man. You can absolutely be a terrible human being and still be pretty manly. I don't like everybody to like, well, he's not a man because he, did something bad or stole something. And personally, I think, if that guy was coming down the street and I had to take him or one of these, like male feminists, and this bad guy who's done a whole bunch of terrible things, but he carries himself in a certain way and he's a little bit threatening, and he looks like he would be ready to take action. Doesn't matter if he's an amoral person, he's still manlier than the guy wearing the unisex outfit and like
Pink pussy
feeling
cat.
sassy and
The word people.
The feminist ally.
So I think that it's an amoral thing, and then as any culture, all of us come from different backgrounds and would have our own cultural definition about what makes a good man. But I think it's really important to look at those basic qualities, and always and everywhere. There is no culture that it's like, it's more masculine to be weaker. That's just never true.
Yeah.
And all throughout human history, never true. The same thing with courage. Like it's more masculine for a man to be fearful and retiring. That's not real. That's never happened in history. We've never thought of each other that way. Good men are incompetent. Like that's never happened. Like that. And
competency is I would say
It's a
something.
masculine
It's
trait.
a masculine
for sure.
trait.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's again how we judge each other. I mean, if you weren't strong or courageous, but you have a lot of useful skills, men value that,
Right.
and that's really important. And so, the virtues that I came up with, and I think that they come from an evolutionary perspective, are strength, courage, mastery, and honor. Which is honor is, I think, just caring about your reputation with other men, because you can't really be trusted in a group if you don't care about the opinion of the other people in that group. That doesn't mean, in the modern world, that includes the entire globe, and you can't possibly care, and you shouldn't, about what everybody in the world thinks of you. But I think you have to find your peers. So that I think that I always say it's masculinity, and what the root of that is comes from, if this building was surrounded, is what I would say, or zombies or whatever, and we had to pick each other real fast. Well, I think I would have Ed to help me, and I think we could take some zombies and then figure it out. I mean, that's the first thing that you're going to think of. You're going to who's capable of doing this, and I think that that's basic and human. And in an emergency, we would all do the exact same thing. And I think that those values are rooted there. And I think if you start from that place, these things that have always been masculine, that can be your true north.
Let's throw it over to Ed, since You're
Ed's
gonna be
got,
the
Ed's got
zombie
something on
slaughter
this one. I
co-pilot.
know. Here we go.
I mean, like you spend a lot of time beating on people, right? So
Yeah.
Not
it's
too much anymore, but
physical.
I'm listening to this, and the first thing I think of with these hacks is how pussy whipped everyone has kind of gotten, because, like you said, only other men can decide what is masculine, and we all want women. That's like, our drive, and we take the most efficient route to get there in many cases, if not all cases. So if you have a group of women that are trying to decide that you want to be with, and they get to decide who you are, and you give them that power, because you feel like if we let them decide that this trait is good or that trait is good, then I have a much better chance of getting with that woman, right? It's like Donovan was saying, she's still not going to sleep with you. That's where that is rooted in, this idea that if I trade, if I'm a trader, if I go against what I believe, or even if I was never taught, if I let them decide what is masculine, then perhaps they will give me a good grade, and they will let me, pass the class, so to speak. And that's how we get all these hacks, these guys. I really think I don't even think they mean well. I genuinely believe they're misguided. I think their whole goal at some point was to gain the favor of women. And why were they wanted that favor? We can get into that, but I think it all comes back down to, that's what we want. We want to reproduce and survive, and that's a way to do it. Gain the favor of women, since they help us reproduce. And that's so important that they will give up, they will co-sign on traits that are not masculine, on lifestyles and activities and behaviors that do not further the male objective, and then try to come back and tell other men this is the way to behave. And the whole movement gets co-signed and switched out, and all of a sudden you got guys trying to tell other guys, like the arguments between men on what is before we even get to red pill, what is masculinity. We shouldn't, that's not an argument. That should be a thing. A group of guys get together and go, okay, well, either it holds water or it doesn't. Either we can test it or we can't. And instead we have groups that are letting other women decide.
We make it subjective.
Making it subjective, because if you make it subjective, if you keep moving the goalposts,
everybody's a winner.
Everyone's a winner. Everyone's a man. But they don't want to hear that, because part of being a man is dealing with. I was thinking of all my little traits that I would put under the umbrella of masculinity, and part of being a man is you have to accept the negative. You have to accept that things are going to be difficult and things are going to be challenging, and sometimes it's not going to go your way. Many times it's not going to go your way. You're going to measure yourself and find out, you don't weigh enough. You have to get your weight up, as we say. And it's not good. A lot of these guys don't want to eat that. They want a subjective assessment of their ability, so they can just move and decide who they are. So,
yeah. All right. I'm gonna put it to Alan Roger Curry. He's he's been around. He's one of the panel elders, right?
Yeah.
Dude, you've seen a lot. So how do things look to you for this subject? With all these hacks out there.
Man, I'm glad I got all you guys for this. This is great.
You see a lot of hacks, and you're not afraid to call them out on it. You'll go on a rant. I've seen you do it.
Yeah, I'm legendary for my YouTube rants.
Yeah.
It's challenging for young guys coming up today, because you have corporate America that knows that women purchase more consumer goods and services on average than men do. Media and entertainment industry knows that women buy more movie tickets and watch more TV shows and soap operas than men do.
They also make all the big buying decisions too when it
They're
comes to household decisions.
Primary
right?
consumers.
Buying the house, buying the car.
Exactly.
Big time.
So what has happened in this society today is that women have essentially said, well, we're spending all this money. We want to be able to influence how men behave towards us. And they have allies in corporate America, male allies in media and entertainment. And you got movies and TV shows projecting us as idiots. Somebody mentioned competency, incompetent, pussy whipped guys. That's not real. That's fiction. But women want fiction to be real. They want to present that as if it's real. Not all women. You have exceptions, of course. But then you have, I don't want to pick on single moms, but you got a lot of single mothers coddling kids. My father allowed my mother to coddle me to maybe 8, 9. And he was basically like, that's going to stop. I'm taking over. And my dad, if I bruised my knee, my mom might have been there to, kiss me on the cheek and say, but my father was like, hey, son, you're going to have unexpected episodes of adversity come your way. You're going to have threats come your way. You're going to have challenges come your way. So everything about you has to deal with being prepared for that. Prepare for that. Because this is a game, in a football game, you don't get to quit in the middle of the third quarter. You got to play the game out. But I mentioned in my presentation, we've had some big name guys, they quit. And it's because this society is, you're raising coddled men, which translates into weak men who can't handle challenges, who can't handle unexpected episodes of adversity. And they're allowing women, I see all these memes on social media. A real man cooks dinner for his wife. A real man brings flowers every night.
You want to go a little deeper on that one?
I made a promise to myself. I said I'm gonna be PG-13 for this red man. I got somewhat of a potty mouth.
You can still swear at PG-13.
But so yeah, I don't want to get too long-winded, but yeah, men should, number one, as everyone has said, only men can define who men are. So that's the masculine trait right there, is to say to women, either with words or just even with a facial expression, when they try to define us, no. A man knows who he is. And here's the trick, though. Here's the trick. Women will tell, in my line of work, I tell so many of my clients, women will say to a guy, I want you to be this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. Basically, the proverbial nice guy. And then the guy makes all these changes to his behavior, all these modifications and adjustments to his behavior. And then guess what? They say, you know what? I'm not feeling any romantic or sexual sparks with you anymore. I mean, you're a great guy. You're going to make some other woman a great husband and boyfriend. But
I love you, but I'm not in love.
Yeah, that's like Carl's. Carl calls it the pussification or the betatization by 1,000 concessions, and it starts with put your white socks in the white hamper and your colored socks in the colored hamper, and it ends with let's go vegan and have an open relationship.
Yeah, so you heard me say in my presentation, this thing I use with the puppy dog. A lot of women, they want these puppy dogs that they're not sexually attracted to. But I'll end on this. I tell guys, using a dog metaphor, at least show your teeth. At least growl. Bark. So,
Tanner.
Let's throw it over to Tanner, and then I guess Roland and I will top up on that.
So I think one of the things that can kind of get lost in this, and Ivan did a really good job bringing it up, is that I think so often, and we do, I'll probably get in trouble for this, but we even see this within the red pill community, where it may not be that we're seeking women's approval by going through what they tell us is the right way to do it, but it's still that the God we worship is sex. It's this idea that I'm going to be a man so that I can get laid. And that still is worshiping the feminine or worshiping sex as a god. And that doesn't work. That's not within the tactical virtues of masculinity. Man has never been defined by his access to women. That's always been a benefit or a way to reinforce or ratify men who have been masculine. But sexual access has never been a way to define masculinity. And so I think that we need to be careful within our community and guys who come in and they don't take this idea of pedestalization of the one woman and convert it into pedestalization of women or sex or anything else. Because when you have access to good sex and as much as you want it, you either realize it's like, well, I've been sold a bill of goods because I'm still not totally fulfilled in the other things that I want to do, or you recognize that there's a whole lot more to life than just that. And so I think it's so important that we as men recognize that there's more than just our relationships with women that actually go into what it means to be a man. And we have to strive for more than just either the quantity or the quality of sex that we may be lacking when we first stumble into this community.
Yeah, when you think about the great men of history, at the top of the list, that one got laid.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the quality
And,
that you...
and he wasn't defined by that.
Yeah,
He wasn't
yeah.
great because he got
Yeah.
laid. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I want to quickly follow up. It's funny, Tanner, because in my book, Mo 1, in chapter 1, so many people who usually people haven't read it yet, they say, oh man, I want to read Mo 1 because I want to get laid. I want to get laid. And I probably unintentionally have given off that impression. But one thing I made clear in chapter 1 of my book, Mo 1, is that this book was not written with the primary objective of helping you get laid. I say getting laid will be the fringe benefit.
Yes.
That would be the frosting on the cake of being Mo 1. But I'm challenging men to verbally communicate their thoughts, opinions, desires, interests, and intentions in a way that's masculine, that's not, that's unapologetic, not politically correct. And I basically say, if you learn and adopt that style of verbal communication, women will become intrigued by you because they know you own yourself. You own your manhood. You own your masculinity. So that was a very important
Well,
point
yeah,
you
because
made.
a lot of guys, they conflate that, because we'll hear guys say stuff like, well, yeah, you don't make your woman your mission, you have your mission. But then secretly and subtly in the back of their heads, it's still getting laid is the mission, right? And that can't be the mission. Whether it's conscious or subconscious, you have to have a bigger mission. So I love that that's how you start, because it's bigger than that.
Yeah, I want to hit on the apologetic thing because that's what I was going to mention. It's like, a really good example. I had a dude here a couple of nights ago. He's telling me about these, the woes. He's kind of got like one-itis for this girl that he broke up with that he saw for a while. And he did like the kiss of death that a lot of guys do. It's like, they break up and then he writes a note and he emails it to her. For some guys, a handwritten note. I've done the handwritten note. He did the email and it's like, once you send it, that shit's gone. Thank God, the handwritten note, you can read it afterwards and crumple it up or burn it or something like that and get rid of it and not look like an idiot. But guys are always apologizing. And that's not a masculine trait. I mean, apologizing for being a man, for being who you are, that's not masculine. That's weak. You need to apologize at some points in your life. I mean, you've got a few sorries you can use, but I think men overuse the word sorry far too often, right?
Very
But I
much
think
so.
there's even a difference between an emotive apology and an apology, because my wife and I had something that came out. I don't remember the details of what it was, but I was in the wrong. And she's pregnant, so she's even more emotionally vulnerable. And I could have been crooning and emotive and, oh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I hurt you. And all I said was, yeah, I screwed that one up. I'm sorry. And then that was it. That was the end of it. And so there's a big difference between being willing to admit that we're not perfect, but it doesn't have to be this vulnerability or this emotive thing that please approve of me again and please tell me I'm okay.
I like the phrase mistakes were made.
Yeah.
Because it's not a weak I'm sorry, it's mistakes were made.
Where it's like, yeah, I feel bad for doing that.
Yeah.
Not an apology, just I was going to say that the things that are kind of striking me right here is the apologetics. First of all, that is like key to a lot of these quote unquote men's organizations right now, especially the Good Man Project, for instance. They've got a video out there called Dear Woman, and it's these two just the most beta male guys that you've ever seen, just crying and emoting on this camera, pretending to speak for mankind. And it's like, we're sorry for all of the hardships and hurts.
Wasn't there
that
a guy that did a TED
you.
talk that did that in some like pink shirt?
Yeah, that was the guy from We Are Man Enough.
Yeah,
that
right,
guy.
yeah.
And this is a guy who just simply never got it. He never had any conventional masculine influence. I wish I remember the guy's name right now, but prime example of the kind of guy who wants to define masculinity for himself, but in doing so, he has to define it for all these other guys too, so that he feels affirmed by that. Like, so if he says, well, I think masculinity is subjective and it doesn't have to be what it's always been before. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to start this conversation off like that, is because I'm of the opinion that there are definitive masculine traits that are unique to men alone. Women can lay claim to those things if they want to and say, well, not just men do this, but women can do this too. Yes, but masculine women do those things. The other thing I was going to say is that
before you hop on the other thing, guys, we're going to hop into questions in about 5 or 10 minutes. So if you want to queue up from the audience, then we'll get this thing moving quicker.
I was just going to say is that there needs to be, first of all, it needs to be from the bottom up, and that usually starts with teaching your kids teaching your boys, their role model. You model that, be a template of masculinity for them. Because I see so many guys today that come to me, and one of the reasons we have this Lost Boys generation is because we have had generation after generation since really the sexual revolution that has convinced us that men need to get in touch with their emotions. Men need to be more vulnerable. Men need to be more like a woman, or more like, to align or to be more sensitive to the feminine. And it's my opinion that good relationships are built on polarity, and that there needs to be a separation between the two. There is a misunderstanding right now that, and a lot of guys do this, it's what I call identification game. These guys will build an entire life around being a good ally, being the perfect boyfriend when the right girl comes around, which of course is right when she hits her epiphany phase and she's about 30 years old and ready to get off the carousel. Then he's ready and waiting, and he's one of these betas in waiting. But I see the blue pill as training these guys up from 5 years old to become the majority of men being beta. The 80-20 rule, 80% of men being beta. They're in the perfect position to play that role in women's sexual strategies after that. And I see that is based on an identification, saying if I'm more like a woman, if I can identify more, if I can emote more, if I can be more,
it's almost like it's a competition. If you can emote more, then you'll get more girls.
Exactly, and it's just like what Ed was saying just a minute ago, is like they'll make a competition of it, and they try to be more alike, and it's like because they believe that like attracts like, but like opposites attract, not likes attract. And then finally, the last thing I want to say is that I think there needs to be a delineation. We don't have rites of passage anymore. We don't have, like in Jewish culture, it's a bar mitzvah or whatever. There's that point where everybody says, okay, you're 14 years old, go out and kill a lion and don't come back to the tribe until you've killed that lion or whatever. That I'm not saying go out and do that, but I think we've gotten to a point where we have pussified our boys and again taught them as if they were defective girls, or drugged them whenever they act like boys. And there is this angst amongst boys because they feel like they were born defective, like they have something wrong with them, because they have testosterone, they've been poisoned by their testosterone, and they take that and they believe that, and so they become what I call gender loathing. And what happens after that is they don't know when they get to be a man and when they don't get to be a man. And right now, what Tanner was saying, maybe that delineation is just them getting laid. So once you get laid, then you're a man. And I think that the feminine imperative has now taken that, and a lot of guys, feminist allies too, on a lot of the organizations I was just talking about, they want to keep manhood away from you. They want to say, I have the authority to say you're a man and you're not a man. And so if you do more for the feminine, if you align yourself up with being more like women, if you do what you're supposed to, one of the reasons we shame men for not building themselves up and being the perfect husband and father by the time they get to be 30, we shame those guys and we say they're perpetuating their adolescence. But we don't say that for women. We don't say that women are doing that. We say, oh, she's focusing on her career. And so when a woman is freezing her eggs because she can't find Mr. Right, we don't shame her for that. But we will shame the guy who's not, saving his money so he can buy a house. We'll shame him because he didn't go to college and spend all this money, in college and doing whatever.
Yeah, like she's the hero and he's the hero
she's
for
the hero.
doing that, right?
And the thing is, so what they do is they hold on to this, like they have this medal that is manhood, okay? And we're going to hold this medal until you do what women tell you that you should be doing. And then maybe then we'll give you the medal that says you're a man. So that's where you get those memes, which is like a real man does this, a real man does that. What that is that's the feminine imperative holding on to the title of manhood. And if you don't bring her flowers, and if you don't do this stuff, and if you're not emotionally available, and you don't do all this other crap, then you don't get to be a man. And so we're going to withhold that. I think that especially in our red pill journey, so to speak, when we unplug from the matrix, when we push away and we cut away that blue pill side of us, and we want to move into a red pill paradigm, there needs to be a point of delineation. There needs to be a distinction there, whether that's a rite of passage or there's something that says, you know what? People ask me all the time, when did you unplug, or when did you have your moment of my aha moment or something like that? And for some guys, it's like a gradual thing. And then for other guys, maybe it's just like, maybe they read my book, or maybe something like bad in their life, a trauma happened. And then they go, oh, this is my moment of clarity, where I get that. I think there needs to be some kind of delineation where you go, you know what? You don't get to hold on to the title of manhood. I'm taking the manhood now. I'm a man because I say I'm a man today.
Yeah, your time's up. It's it's okay. We got this. Ivan, you want to add something?
So rather those is touching on something that's very important. So did Alan, talking about how the consumer base of women, the media and entertainment. I'll think about something. Women as a whole do not have the ability to define being a man or being a woman even to each other. Right? A girl knows she's a woman unequivocally. When she has her first period, she hits puberty, men start to notice her. There's no ability for a woman to shame another woman and say, you're not a real woman. They don't have that. They don't have that ability. They don't have that experience. Yeah. Now, a man is not a man until other men say he is. That leaves the definition open. Now, if you can take the definition of masculinity and you can suck the life out of it and you can turn them into women, you just doubled your consumer base. You've commoditized them. Too. Okay. So there's a very real, very powerful, very pervasive interest in doing that to men.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like you see cosmetic companies now trying to sell
don't even get me started on
well, what he says is true. Is women are and a man must become. That's why I wrote The Burden of Performance. Each one of us has a burden of performance, and it's not just women saying, "Oh, you're acceptable and you're not." It's other men. It's your tribe of men that are saying you are now part of this tribe. That is also part of the burden of performance, and you don't escape that as a man.
Well, what's baked into that is that you have to have a tribe. And you have to have sons. And what sucks about this is you're getting it from all directions, is that I have a son, but how many of us here have sons? How many of us have tried to build tribes as opposed to, again, just trying to focus on kind of what the precursor steps are and thinking that that's the goal. And so I think it's so important that we continue to, like Jack talked about last year, do this generative masculinity and focus on, okay, well, what are the tribes? How do we delineate them? Who are our peers? Who are the men whose opinions matter to us? What are those rite of passages? How do we actually get it so that we have sons and we bring them into the world and we can shape the world that we're bringing them into, and those kinds of things? That's critical, because everything else that we've talked about is hinging on the assumption that we're doing those things.
All right. I want to move into questions. Do we have people queued up? It's hard to see with the lights.
Yeah. Hello, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Superhero movies are like all the rage, and I don't believe that train will ever stop. So my question is, should young boys still look up to modern day superheroes for inspiration of masculinity? And if not, what other examples should young men look to besides fathers in the household?
Yeah, I'll talk about the superhero stuff because I mean I've watched a lot of comic book character shit when I was growing up and even still as a grown ass adult. That's changing a lot. Like a lot of the superheroes you see in the movie screen now, they're a lot less masculine. That's for sure. You know, even when I was a kid, you'd see like strong, muscular men in tights, but you know. The guys they're putting on the screens right now, and a lot of them, isn't there a new superhero that's coming out that's all female cast?
Probably.
That's probably
That's
Miss
Marvel.
Marvel.
Yeah, it's like
Marvel.
it's like a Marvel piece. It's like an all female cast of superheroes, and it's like, we've already seen guys complain about what's happened with the Star Wars franchise. Like, the last one or the one prior to the last one was very feminized. I mean, like we had basically a feminist as as a commander of the Allied forces with purple hair and stuff. But yeah, it's bonkers. I mean, masculinity is being watered down, and it is what it is. I mean, there's like guys like us up, like these are men. I speak from my heart when I say, like, I know all of these men sitting at this table intimately, and they're men. They don't apologize for who they are as men, whether they're married, single, dating, plate spinning, whatever. They are men, and they don't apologize for that shit. And unfortunately, they're not going to get the lead role of the next superhero movie for the Red Pill or something like that. But
Jack may be the villain.
I was
Yeah.
gonna, I was gonna say,
Jack
I'm
would be like the hero, right?
I'm a big fan.
Pagan ninja.
I'm a big fan of comic books. I grew up on comic books. I love sci-fi fantasy stuff too as well. But I think a lot of the stories, particularly the older ones, are based on masculine archetypes. They're based on that hero's journey thing, or they are what would you do if you had a superpower, kind of like Spider-Man, for instance. Spider-Man's a kid and he's bullied and gets his ass kicked and he's a 98-pound weakling, and suddenly he's bit by a radioactive spider and now he has like super strength. And what that is that's kind of the story of it's this weak beta male fantasy where he just has some sort of magic transformation and he becomes a superhero, but he still is expected to keep his nice guy, happy-go-lucky kind of personality behind that. That's one archetype. The other is the sort of the Captain Kirk, Han Solo kind of archetype, where it's like the unapologetic alpha male guy. Maybe that's Captain America. I mean, if you look at the difference between, say, like Captain America and like Iron Man and Tony Stark, you can see two masculine archetypes there. Both of them are alphas. Just one goes about it, in one way, and the other, and then say Captain America goes about it, and he's really bastion of good versus evil. Whereas, I would almost say Tony Stark is kind of like the Sigma alpha, or the Sigma male kind of guy who's still alpha, but he's like the lone wolf and does things his own way. But all of those are getting pushed to the side right now because SJWs cannot create anything for themselves. They have to take a successful franchise and they have to take that franchise and insert their messaging into it, because if they know that if they were to create their own superheroes, they would fall flat because those archetypes don't exist in anything that they create. So they say, oh, look, Star Wars, everybody loves Star Wars. Let's take that and make that as gender inclusive and as feminist intersectional as we possibly can. Let's do an all-female cast of Ghostbusters. I mean, that's the whole rage, and all of these fall flat. And at some point, Hollywood's going to figure it out. But I see that as sort of this infiltration into what I call male space. And so you have this male space, which is comic books, and you've got muscular guys who are here, who are portray the hero archetypes, and then you've got women, at least back in the 70s and 80s, who were these buxom, beautiful women drawn
Woman, right?
drawn by a guy with the mindset that he would really like to get with a woman like that. Right. But that's his fantasy. And they've built a successful franchise on men's fantasies, on men's, aspirations to be better, or, the hero archetype. Or else they are building it on, like I said, the going from a point of weakness to a point of strength, and then on hot, sexy women. And so you build it on that, and you get the SJW, social justice warrior influence that comes into that. and they want to shake that up. And in doing so, they destroy the formula that was so successful from, why we have such fond memories of our comic book days when we were kids. We want to go back to that, and we try to go back to that, and we find that the purple hair woman from HR is now the commanding officer of the Starfleet. Yeah.
You know what's interesting though? I mean, you'll never see a guy like Dwayne Johnson cast in a Marvel Comics movie. I mean, we've never seen it. You've never seen a guy like Vin Diesel, like a strong, imposing, masculine man. It's not that they don't, like Henry Cavill, the guy that does Superman. I mean, he's a dude sort of thing. But you're not going to have like a leading role that's going to draw a lot of eyeballs to that storyline. It's like it just doesn't go. You wanted to talk on that?
Yeah, I think this concept of heroes is critically important, and we've been saying, and Wallow very articulately called out the destruction of the male hero in media and comic books and movies is deliberate, it is disgusting, and it is very effective. So where can you go for that? When I was growing up, comic books weren't really a part of my childhood, but what were the historical heroes. My father pushed those on me, so read this, understand it. Let's take for a minute, let's say they do a Civil War movie, right? We're going to have a gallant display of battles and courage and honor, but Robert E. Lee will be played by a woman. Not going to work. You can denigrate history, like they do today with Winston Churchill, but you can't change it. Look to history, look to the heroes there. One of my favorite stories is Horatius at the bridge. If you're familiar with the story, the Etruscans were invading Rome, there's a bridge to cross over, and one guy said, I'll stand on the bridge. A general and a foot soldier said, we'll stand with you. And they held off the entire army. And a famous poem said, for how can man die better than facing fearful odds? For the temples of his fathers, for the ashes of his fathers, and the temples of his gods. That is real. That happened. They cannot erase it. Find those heroes and understand what the heart is within that. These heroes of the past, whether it's Audie Murphy or Horatius or Robert E. Lee or General Grant or Caesar, it wasn't necessarily an idea that motivates men to acts of heroism. It's here. If you can embody that and find that, you will be on the path to immortal manhood. That makes sense?
It's a great point. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say, because I love that. And I think that that's so spot on. And I think one of the other things that's so important is that we can even scale that down, because I think one of the things that's so interesting about this idea of fantasy superheroes is for young boys, that's critical and that's important. But as you get older, that should become less and less important because one, you've leveled up, and two, you're in a culture and you're surrounded by men who are actually worth aspiring to become like. And so I think it's so critical that we as men become the kind of men that we would hope that we would want to grow up to be like when we were kids. Are we overweight? Do we just show up in basketball shorts and in an ironic t-shirt? Are we more interested in watching the game than in actually pushing ourselves and becoming better? Do we just have a job? Do we just listen to the nagging wife? Do we just exist? Or do we do our own level? Maybe we're not going to be a level 10 superhero or a level 8 historical superhero, but if we're at least a level 5 local hero, somebody that a young man would want to aspire to become like, he's not going to need those others as much because he's going to say, I don't have to be this because I can be fulfilled being that.
Yeah.
Quick observation, a little lighthearted, but it's important. When I was young, I'm going to date myself, as Coop called me one of the elders, 55. But one of my favorite shows was The Incredible Hulk on CBS. And he would protect people. He would do what he had to do. And then he would revert back to, you could say, the more beta Bruce Banner. What have you seen in movies? Now, the Hulk is supposed to be the most indestructible alpha male in of all superheroes. But what does it take now to get him to go back to Bruce Banner? a woman saying, Bruce.
True.
See, immortal archetypes.
Yeah, all right. Do we have another question in the lineup?
Yeah, great talk and great conference. So it was a very interesting that because I had a little bit of an epiphany last night, and I was out drinking with Jack Donovan and a few of our attendees. Let me just tell you a little bit about what I was thinking and when I woke up. To Tanner's comments earlier about why men do stuff, I realized that over the past few decades that I've been doing everything in terms of work, business, money, fitness, game, and style, and self-improvement, really just to get women. And it's gone through different cycles. So maybe like I'll get a bad girl and then it'll make me, get even more extreme in terms of my self-improvement. But now I have to catch myself. It came to the epiphanies that, wow, I'm really being driven by woman, by pussy. That's not really my full control. But I'm successful in all those fields. So now what do I do?
Well, you know what's important? And Jack touched on this in his presentation. Back in the day, men had to be courageous because the circumstances around them demanded it. No guy would kill a dinosaur just to get laid.
There are 100 people on Twitter going, men never lived with dinosaurs right now. I guarantee you.
Historical fallacy.
Yeah, it's a historical fallacy.
Woolly mammoth. It's okay.
But in today's society, I mean, the way is I'm not per se criticizing a civilized society, but again, how Jack articulated it, it's changed masculinity because a lot of women feel like, well, if I need protection, I can just call the cops.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to depend on my boyfriend, my husband to be masculine and courageous because police officer John is going to help me. And so now a lot of guys, because they don't have real challenges and threats just to provoke them to be masculine because their life demands that they be masculine, they say, well, shoot, I need to do this to get laid, and I need to do that to get laid, and I need to do this to get laid. And everything ends up centered around just getting laid.
Yeah, just to add to that a little bit. I mean, Rollo always talks about making yourself your own mental point of origin, and if your idea of being with a woman is like the mental point of origin, everything you're going to do is going to try to build on that foundation. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you chase excellence, not women, like I said in my talk, you will be spoiled for choice. I mean, if you're doing the right things, you look strong, you look masculine, you make an impact in the world, you know how to make bank, you're putting a dent in the universe, women will be around, and it's really not that hard. So I mean, if you put the focus on like the pickup or the regurgitation of certain lines to break into a group of women in a nightclub or in a public place or in a park, yeah, that works. But what do you do after? We saw the great mystery from Neil Strauss's, The Game, have one-itis for his Katya sort of thing. And, this was like, the lord of the pickup artistry sort of thing. This is kind of what this talk is about, like the hacks out there sort of thing. Long-term game means a hell of a lot more than remembering lines or regurgitating them and approaching women and trying to close a deal. It's a lot bigger than that. There's a lot more to being a man than just that.
That's where I think a lot of critics of the red pill kind of have like tunnel vision of, they think that it's just about getting laid. It's just, you're just teaching guys how to get laid. Or there's more important things.
What do they call us? Pussy beggars?
Yeah, pussy beggars.
And like the latest thing is, you're a bunch of old white men trying to be alphas by saying big words.
Right.
We got a couple brothers on here.
Yeah.
Can we get some recognition and shit?
I know. But I was going to say is that, when you get to that point, I've worked with guys who all they wanted to know was, okay, just teach me some game. Why does game work? And how can I go and apply that? And they'll just learn that side of it. And they never really understand the mechanics, or like they never want to look under the hood is how I say it. They just want to drive the car. They don't want to know how to build the car. They don't want to know how to fix the car. They just want to, they want the keys to the car and the cheat codes to the video game. And then they're going to go off. And then sooner or later, these guys come back and they go, oh, Rollo, help me. I'm with a borderline personality disorder woman and I don't know what to do with it. And then you get the guys who are similar to your situation where they've done everything the right way. Maybe they are getting laid and they've got to that point, and then they go, what else is there? What's left for me? And again, that comes back to what I was talking about before. When we pedestalize womankind, when we don't make ourselves our mental point of origin, we make womankind our mental point of origin. A lot of guys have to give themselves permission to be selfish, to be, I don't want to say selfish, but let's say self-important or self-concerned. And we always say, you got to knock the woman off the pedestal. You got to knock womankind off the pedestal, and you have to put yourself first. Like I said, I'm a big proponent of enlightened self-interest. I can't help anyone until I can help myself. And I can't help anyone as well as when I help myself first. And then I can go help somebody else after that. And so when all you do is just focus on some object-oriented goal, like getting laid, great. What happens when you can get laid regularly? When you're like, okay, this is no longer a challenge, or I have a girlfriend, or I have a wife that really likes having sex with me. Now what do I want to do? Am I just going to lean back and just kick back? No, I guess I made it. Or are you going to do like Jack said, is there going to be another challenge? Is there going to be some new, the Aurora Boreas, right? Is that what it was? Yeah. Is there, it's not so you can get to the weekend, it's so that you can get to the next project, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're asking you for the linear solution.
Yes.
They're like, what are the 3 steps that I need to take to get laid?
The red pill is not a linear
yourself.
solution.
Right.
It's a constant solution. It's a way of life.
Well,
it's a life choice.
That's such a good question because, I mean, when you take off the whole idea of womankind or sex or anything else is the goal, because when you get there, you realize that it's not. And like Jack talked about, survival is not the goal because that's already largely taken care of for us. Then what are the options? What are the other options for a why? Why become the best version of yourself? I think that's a really tough and a really valid question. And I think, as I've listened to you guys talk and as I've been thinking about this, and I'm curious if you guys can come up with more than this than I have, but I can think of 3 reasons. One is this idea of egoism where I am me and I want to be the best version of me. And so that's this self-fulfillment component. I think number 2 is this idea of legacy, which is I want to make the world a better place, and that maybe for my children or for my tribe or for anything else, but I want to matter to the world. I want to make it better than how it was when I left it. And I think the third one is related to something bigger than just what this temporal world is. So whether that's religion or divine potential or something else, but it's the idea of, for me, I have a moral obligation by virtue of my relationship with God that I need to become the best version of myself. And so I think that those 3 things are kind of the main camps to put it in. But if it's not in one of those, then why even care? Why even try to be the best version of yourself beyond just getting laid and making some money?
All right, let's hop into the next question.
Hey guys, I'm not a native speaker, so it's just kind of a note. There's like a difference. There's 2 words, like getting pussy and being a pussy. There's it's pusillanimous, which is an adjective showing a lack of courage or determination, being timid, and it comes from Latin, having a very small mind. I found that very interesting because people always tell you don't be a pussy. But usually they think, don't be, I don't know, a girl or a feminine woman, whatever. But it's actually a whole lot has to do with be masculine, be courageous, be determined, be there, be present. And I think most of the guys don't understand that. It's that was very interesting. And just a short question maybe, as an exercise of imagination for the panel, how would you see masculinity being taught in school? How would you see maybe a rite of passage being taught in school, or the whole...
I did a long video on this, man. It's not being taught in school. It's, what is it? 80-90% of school teachers are female. I mean, even in Canada where I'm from, I was a kid around November, December time, little puddles of water would freeze up. And as kids, you'd run up to them and slide across them as fast as you could, right? Now you can't do that shit anymore. you get put in detention, or you get taken inside, or you got to go to the principal's office if you're playing on ice. So it's like they don't, they like, I did incredibly bad in school. Like I was a DC student. I was a very poor student, according to like the school guidance rules. I remember I sat in the principal's office for about a week in grade 8 because the teacher didn't know how to handle me in the classroom. So she figured, fuck it, I'll put him in the principal's office and let him sit there. And the principal was looking at me like, look, son, if you don't smarten up, you're not going to get a good job like me. And, but it's like, dude, like I make more than you in a couple months and what you did all year. And, this guy's lecturing me about what success is and what a man should be. It's like, you are like, when I look back at those moments and days, and even today, I mean, if I had a son, I'd be fearful putting him through the school system, because the school system does not manufacture boys and girls. It basically manufactures, it's a indoctrination system of like the government protocol. And what it does is it spits out girls and feminized boys. Oh, you guys hit on that.
Ed.
Oh, man. I got to talk about this a lot with some people. I mean, I don't have kids. This is just my opinion and my observation. We need to get back to some type of physical expression. When I was a kid, and the school system wasn't perfect when I was a kid. I'm 33, but we used to go out during lunchtime. First of all, we had like an hour recess, which is great, and we would play outside, and the boys would get together, and we would have races for candy, or we had some kids they like doing backflips and all that nonsense. The point is that we were, not only did we have that, we had gym as well. There was almost 2 hours of physical expression a day. And if you didn't like it, you didn't have to. I mean, there were people getting out of the gym at that point. And now the problem is they're removing that option. There isn't recess. They're trying to get rid of physical education. They're removing that element of real tactile. I'm going to learn kinesthetically. I'm going to engage in the world that way. That's the first step. The second thing, which is kind of related to the first thing, is we need to reinstill a sense of competition in the school system between the students, not necessarily with an imaginary grade system. And this is a guy who has flourished in that grade system as well. But we need to make it more about how you compete and relate with your fellow students. Our ranking system. We say, we don't want to damage these kids' self-esteem, but part of that damage, you don't want to break it and ruin it, but you do need to nick it a bit. You do need kids to feel like they have to earn their place and their respect amongst their peers. And it's not just about the authority looking down on you, deciding that you are good, you are bad, and you're going to forever be doomed to service wages and maybe we'll promote you. No, kids have no sense of honor and respect amongst themselves because they're not forced to ever compete amongst themselves unless, the kid decides to compete in some kind of sport activity, but the numbers are so low and now we're trying to get, and let's not get into what's changed at the professional level in many sports, particularly at least the NFL, and how that is trickling down to the high school level and then ultimately the college level in sports. But yeah, I think to sum up what I'm saying, we need to get back to physical expression in the school system, and we also should get back to some level of competition. It forces kids to recognize each other as not just in a you're cool, you're popular kind of way, but no, I mean we really used to have straight up contests and competitions in elementary school and middle school, recess throughout the year. Who was the fastest, we used to shoot hoops all the time. I was terrible at basketball. I'm that black guy, the anomaly, but we used to have all kinds of ways to prove who was going to be, who was the man, and we gained respect that way, and it wasn't negative, and it forced us to improve.
Another competition that doesn't exist in the school system anymore is like the grading system. In Canada, like I don't know what it is in the certain schools in the States, but I mean in Canada, like they don't fail students anymore. So if you're a shitty student and you don't get it, you still move on to the next grade regardless of what your skills are, whether or not you comprehend the curriculum. They do not fail children anymore. And one of the other things that I just learned about in the other last couple of months, what pissed me off when I heard about this was if a parent wants to go in and complain to the teacher that their child's feelings were hurt because they got a C instead of an A+, the teacher's instructed by the board to give them an A plus, right? So like, like kids got to learn about rejection in life. I mean, Rollo talks about this all the time. I mean, for a boy to evolve into a man, to go through the rites of passage, they have to understand, hey, if you can't figure out the math test and you suck at it, you get, the 0, or you fail, or whatever it's got to be, and you got to go to summer school. I sucked at math in grade 6, and I had to go to summer school to figure it out. Did I learn? Fucking rights, I learned my lesson. I studied my ass off to make sure that I didn't fail again, because I didn't want to have to walk in the blazing sun to go to summer school while all my friends were outside having fun and swimming and doing other things, right? So, I think it's incredibly important just to understand that it's not a friendly place for boys to grow up in the school system today. It's an indoctrination system, essentially, to feminize them.
We are teaching boys as if they were defective girls. We are drugging boys with Adderall and Ritalin like never before. And why? Because the school systems are so controlled by a feminine mindset. If it's not females as it is, it's a feminine mindset, in that women teach in a certain style. They teach as if they're teaching for girls. We want to give girls the world, right? And it's part of this, what I call the fempowerment narrative. It's where we're going to build women up. Title IX is a really great example of that too. But it's where we're giving our girls every advantage, and that's really hard for me to say when I have a daughter myself, and I want her to grow up and be on top of things. But I don't want that to be at the expense of boys. I don't want that to be a lack of understanding. But the reason that we have a feminine primary education system, at least here in the United States, is it's mostly women that are teaching right now. And why is that? Because it's dangerous. It's dangerous territory for a man to be a teacher. First of all, it's not that well paid. Why? Because we need guys to. Guys want to make money. They want to. It's this dominance hierarchy thing. So it takes a really special kind of guy to actually want to be a teacher.
Even when it's a well-paid role, like in Canada, a top-tier teacher will make about like 98 grand. Right?
And yeah,
like
it's still even good. I don't know what the average is for the United States, but
a lot lower. It's about
I'm sure it is. And so it takes a guy who has a drive for that. So even when you have a guy that is in education, there's always a chance that he's going to get Me Too'd. There's always a chance that some student's going to say he looked at me wrong, or whatever, he's going to give me an F. He looked at me wrong. I mean, girls as young as, 7, 8, 9 years old understand that dynamic now. They know that if all they have to do is say some certain things and cast aspersion on a teacher. And it's like, it's this threat assessment. I think what we're doing right now, and I wanted to say this in my speech, was I had this video queued up. It was like this old Twilight Zone episode where it's this little boy who can control everything in his town and in his family, and so consequently, all of his parents and the friends of the parents, they're all isolated, and they have to do whatever this kid says because he can magically make things happen, and basically he can kill you if he wants to, and wish you away to the cornfield. And what I think we're doing right now is something very similar, where we are pandering to the feminine imperative, where we're like, we don't want to, where we're always stepping on eggshells. We don't want to rattle, we don't want to experiment. We don't want to shake up the apple cart kind of thing, because if we do, we're going to get collectively wished away to the cornfield. And that is with Me Too right now. And so when a guy wants to get into educating, or he wants to even just be a mentor for a kid, he still has that in the back of his head. Like, if I do this, am I going to be seen as a pedophile? If I do this, is what I'm teaching going to offend the feminine establishment? Because if I go there as a masculine male and I'm mentoring boys, and I say, you need to get into competition. You need to be more masculine. You need to, here are some ways to do that. I have to watch my ass, because just me saying that, I can upset, any feminist within earshot to say, Mr. Rollo there said that, that boys should be more competitive. And that's perpetuating masculine, toxic masculine stereotypes. And I lose my job. That's what you have to watch out for these days. But
all right, Sorry, do you want to add to that?
Well, because
Yeah.
we're working on this too. Because I've got 3 kids, and one of them's a son, and I think that as important as those macro changes are, it'll take decades and a whole lot more backlash to get to the point where we can change that within the public school system. And so I think, for anybody who's actually wanting to know, okay, well, I've got young kids, what do I do about it now? How do I actually tackle and approach that now? I think we can substitute what Ed is talking about by putting your kids in sports, and particularly even into like combat stuff. Have them do wrestling or boxing or things like that, so that they start to engage that way. And I would say get yourself in a financial and a cultural position where homeschool and even like homeschool co-ops and those kind of things are an option, because I agree with you guys. It is a death sentence to send your kids, and especially your boys, into school right now. And there's no way that I'm letting my little boy go into that world.
Yeah.
It's not an option.
All right. We got another question?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on this current topic. Do you think that anywhere in the States is it possible for an all-boys school to exist that would help embody and imbue masculinity into these young boys?
Yeah, I'll and by the way, gentlemen, we've got about 10 minutes, so I'll just speak on this very quickly. I got a friend of mine that put his son in a private school. It cost him $30,000 a year, and he's getting all the attention and resources that he needs. It's a smaller classroom. There's a tribe of boys. They're very tribal. Like, they do like a lot of the things that Jack writes about in that private school. So, there are ways to do it, but you're going to have access to resources to put your kids through it in today's world, unfortunately. But yeah, I'll pass it off to the panel.
It's a really good business opportunity to start similar schools too. Yeah, it's a really good opportunity. Yeah.
All male exclusivity is really tough these days too. So if you've read my post and my chapter on male space, we're seeing this happen right now in the Boy Scouts, where it's no longer the Boy Scouts, it's the Scouts. And it's just so that we can bring girls in. And people want to say, well, that's because the Boy Scouts have been suffering financially for a while. Well, surprise, surprise, right? And now it's come to my attention that there is an all-female group of Cub Scouts. I think it's in Santa Cruz, California, of all places, right? And what that is it's sort of this culmination of the process of the feminine imperative and women just sort of inserting themselves into all male exclusive spaces. The same thing happened at Harvard. They basically eliminated all of the male exclusive campus organizations at Harvard, but kept all of the female exclusive ones. So what that's saying is that they believe that it is dangerous for men to organize and to have any kind of exclusivity within, as determined by sex. So can you do that? Would it be a good idea? Yeah, I would think it'd be a great idea, but there are a lot of obstacles in the way that are going to either prevent you from doing that, or they're going to subvert your intentions for doing that.
It is dangerous. That's
the whole thing.
It actually
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
It's dangerous to their objectives.
Yeah,
So,
it's a threat.
Yeah, here's the thing. It goes back to what I was talking about with corporate America and the influence of media and entertainment. You take this conference, the 21 conference. If this was corporate sponsored by any beverage company, you would have radical feminists saying, well, Jack better say this, Tanner better say this, Rolo better say this, or else we're going to pull our money. And I guess what chaps my hide, this will probably be my final comment. Here's what chaps my hide. Nobody up here is, Ivan's married, Rolo's married. No men up here are going out in the streets just, going up to a woman and slapping her upside the head or raping them. But yet you have women that say, oh, these hateful guys are at this conference. They hate women. Just because you have a strong opinion and you speak truth, all of a sudden you're a hater of the opposite gender. I don't think any man who attended this conference can genuinely. Now, granted, there are some men out there. There are some men out there who are physically abusing women, raping women, and doing whatever. None of those men are at this conference, though. And yet we're branded as haters just for speaking the truth. And I just think it's a shame that society has evolved to that point. But again, they have these male allies in corporate America, in media and entertainment, that if Hollywood was to produce a movie called The 21 Convention, they would have some weak guy playing Rolo said, I started off writing The Rational Male, but I realized I just love women, and it's the Beautiful Women book I should have wrote. I should have wrote the book called The Beautiful Women We Should Cherish as God's Creatures, and something like that. It's just, let me stop.
I think we have time for one more question. We got 5 minutes and we'll wrap it up.
All right, perfect. Because this kind of is relevant since Donovan and Ivan are up there, and it's relevant for everybody. But it seems like last year this convention really changed. Changed directions 180, going towards Red Pill, and this year is like an expansion of that. And just hanging out with a lot of the attendees, it seems like a lot of the guys, even like the other guy said before, he's like, women have been the center of all my progress. Like I've been doing everything just to get women. And it seems like now it's kind of like a point where a lot of the attendees are like, okay, I have the fundamentals down. I can get women. What now? And it seems like I'm thinking like the future of this, like it's been progressing, and I'm seeing the way that I'm seeing the progression. And I want to ask you guys if you see the same thing. Is we're moving towards men. Like right now, it seems like the convention is like how do men interact with women, and I feel like next year it's going to be like how do men interact with men, and tribalism, and like men collaborating locally, like kind of like this, but on a smaller scale, like in their local environments, and then coming back, once a year and doing it on a big level. So do you guys see that like for this event, like, or?
I think it's already happening, man.
Yeah.
I mean, for me anyway, like my own experience was like, dude, your talk was way better this year. I took cues from Tanner, and I upped my, style game. I threw on a nice coat and a
Very
tailored
well,
shirt.
by the way.
Yeah, you did. Cool.
Yeah. So it's like, we're not here going out doing pickup approaches.
Yeah.
You got to do like 100 approaches, throughout the week. Like, I don't think anybody did that practically. It's like, guys are here to understand themselves, the masculinity that, they're supposed to embrace, deal with past trauma, reconcile past beliefs that didn't serve them. A lot of stuff like that. I mean, this is definitely a, become a better version of yourself sort of thing that's happening here.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of this conference is like, if you want to go out sarging or whatever, there's always some guy that, maybe Goldman will go out there with you, or Christian McQueen or something like that with Bill. There is that aspect of it, but there's also more to it than just that. Like Alan was saying, there's married men here, there's single guys here. We have such a depth and breadth of, for lack of a better term, conventional masculinity here. And there is definitely a desire for that, like I said, with the Lost Boys generation. But are we going to lean more one way or the other? I don't know, that remains to be seen. But as far as I can tell right now, I think it's the fact that we encompass so much. That's the primary strength of this convention.
And Joshua, I wanted to quickly say, because me and you have had many conversations, and to the guys who heard my earlier comments, I don't want to ever say, being a dating coach, that getting laid is not important.
Yeah.
Okay? It is. But what I'm saying, using the analogy of health and fitness, if you eat right and exercise, that's a benefit in itself.
Yeah.
And losing weight will be the fringe benefit. But as I think it was Tanner or somebody said, if you just concentrate just on losing weight for the sake of losing weight, once you lose weight,
then Ouroboros, what's next?
Not only that, but if you I always talk about like, why the process is important, not just the outcome. If you focus on just losing weight for the sake of losing weight, you might do some dubious things to lose that weight rather than take the right process. And next thing you know, you've got a whole slew of negative consequences and externalities that you didn't anticipate that you have to deal with. And if you just focus on, okay, I'm going to get my fitness right, my health right, my diet right, and you're going to lose weight, that's great. You're losing weight will be the consequence, but you also get a whole slew of other benefits.
Yeah, that's what I call the crisis of motive. Is guys will will say, well, the only reason you're going to the gym is so that you can get laid. The only reason you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to look good is so you can get laid. I think even Jack was saying, you know, our purpose for getting in shape now is not because we need to go lift heavy things. We actually need to use that to kill a saber-toothed tiger or something. It's that we want to look better, that you want to live a better life. And so I think we need to resist falling into this trap that you only do something for one reason. Like when you go and you work out, like if I'm working out, if I go to martial arts or something like that, do I expect to go walk down the street and go, hey, come here, I'm going to kick your ass? You know, no, it's not. But it's like knowing that you could do that. But there's also other benefits along with that. So do you go to the gym just to get laid? No. But is that a definite plus because you look better naked? Yeah. Okay. Or are you going to stay in shape? Are you doing that to, you know, live a better life, be healthier, have some more confidence in yourself? All of that counts. And so the crisis of motive is who or what are you doing a particular act for? And I'm going to say that it's okay to go to the gym if you're trying to get laid. That's okay. But there's other advantages to that as well. So you need to ask yourself, and that's really a personal question that you have to sort of dig down deep and say, why am I really doing this? And is it worth my while? Because once I achieve that goal, is it going to be worth it to keep doing this? And I like what Ed said. It's the process. It's the process.
All right. So on that note, gentlemen, we're going to wind down this episode. We're going to break for lunch, and then we've got another one this afternoon. And then after that, George Bruno is going to do a wet shave demonstration on my head, apparently. So, yeah, for those of you that are,
see, this is the bonus content.
yeah, this is bonus content for people.
Hey, Coop, when you introduced me at the beginning, I didn't get to say my website. Can I say
Go,
my
yeah,
website?
yeah.
DirectApproachDating.com.
Yeah, and
We'll get that in the.
definitely. You know, again, just to top up on the panel. So Ellen, you know, did his. Where's the best place for people to find you, brother?
All right. EdLattimore.com or Ed Lattimore on Twitter. I live in those places.
Yep. And we got the darktriadman.com.
That's correct.
Rational Mail.
The Rational Mail.
Is it Start the World or is it JackDonovan.com?
It's jack-donovan.com.
Jack-Donovan.com.
Actually, jackdonovan.com someone bought, and it refers to the National Organization for Women.
So make sure you insert the dash.
Someone's paying for that.
Oh my god.
And we got Tanner Guzzi,
Masculine-style.com or at Tanner Guzzi on Twitter.
Awesome. All right. So we'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.
Thank you.
What was your experience so far with the 21 convention?
Oh, outstanding. Outstanding.
Professional all across the board.
Really good energy with a lot of people, and I just like it because it's a very positive direction.
This, George, this has been a first-class event. It's fantastic. You guys run a really tight ship. I've been to a lot of conventions over the course of my business career, and I can tell when things are well-run and when things aren't, and this is a very well-run operation. I was very impressed.
It's pretty incredible to see where Anthony's brought it, especially from last year, which was my first year here, and to see the upgrades he's made, it's been incredible.
I've got my notebook, and with every speaker, I've written down about 2 or 3 lines under each of the speakers of just the key prime stuff. That's good. That's good.
It's very surreal, man. I'm really enjoying it. I'm happy to live in such an era where such a thing like this is possible.
I have never seen a group of guys like this, a group of 200 men who are focused, squared away, they're working on their values. Just never met a bigger group of wonderful guys.
It's kind of neat because I've been to a fair amount of conventions in my day, but you never see one where the guys like here you can just see Ed Lattimore talking to Tanner about boxing.
Yeah.
You just sit down and then you tell your boxing experiences. Everybody's kind of pinging off each other. It's nice.
It has been fantastic. And it's been 4 days of guys all on the same page, working in the same direction.
Fascinating meeting some of the people, hearing their stories. You got people traveling from other parts of the world to come here just to see some of the speakers. That's amazing.
The thing that's impressed me is everybody here is very serious.
Yeah.
They're taking it close to their heart.
What a great convention.
Thanks, George.